Today we step into Galatians chapter 4, a chapter that beats like the emotional heart of the entire letter. If Galatians 3 was Paul's theological masterpiece, Galatians 4 is his pastoral cry. This is where Paul stops sounding like a lawyer and starts sounding like a father. This is where he stops arguing and starts pleading. This is where he opens his heart and says, I am afraid for you. I am laboring for you. I want Christ to be formed in you. Galatians 4 is about identity, not the identity we earn, but the identity we receive. It is about adoption, not as a metaphor, but as a miracle. It is about sonship, not as a theological concept, but as a lived reality. And it is about the Spirit, not as a doctrine, but as the voice inside us crying, Abba, Father. Paul begins with an illustration that would have been instantly understood in the ancient world. He describes a child who is the rightful heir to a massive estate, a child who legally owns everything, yet practically experiences nothing. Though he is the heir, he lives no differently than a servant. He is under guardians, tutors, and managers. He has the title of heir, but not the experience of it. Paul says this is what life under the law was like. Israel was God's chosen people, heirs of the promise, but until Christ came, they lived under the guardianship of the law. The law restrained them, instructed them, and prepared them, but it could not give them the full experience of sonship. It could not give them intimacy. It could not give them freedom. It could not give them inheritance. The law could tell them what righteousness looked like, but it could not make them righteous. The law could reveal sin, but it could not remove it. The law could expose guilt, but it could not cleanse it. The law could point to Christ, but it could not replace him. Paul wants the Galatians to understand that the law was never the destination, it was the tutor that led us to Christ. Then Paul writes one of the most breathtaking statements in all of Scripture, when the fullness of the time was come, God sent forth his Son. Not early, not late, but at the exact moment God ordained, politically, culturally, spiritually, Christ entered the world. Born of a woman, fully human. Born under the law, fully submitted to the system he came to fulfill. And why? To redeem those under the law, that we might receive adoption as sons. Paul wants the Galatians to feel the weight of this truth. God did not simply forgive us, he adopted us. He did not simply cleanse us, he claimed us. He did not simply justify us, he welcomed us. He did not simply save us, he made us his children. Adoption is not a theological accessory. It is the heart of salvation. Paul then says something even more intimate, because you are sons, God has sent forth the Spirit of his Son into your hearts, crying, Abba, Father. This is not the cry of religion. This is not the cry of fear. This is not the cry of performance. This is the cry of a child who knows he is loved. Abba is the language of closeness, tenderness, and trust, the word a child uses when climbing into a father's arms. It is the word Jesus himself used in his most vulnerable moments. Paul wants the Galatians to understand that returning to the law is not just theological mistake, it is a relational tragedy. It is choosing slavery over sonship, fear over freedom, distance over intimacy, performance over presence. Paul is saying, why would you go back to a system that cannot call you son? Then Paul's tone shifts from theological to emotional. He says, how is it that you turn again to the weak and beggarly elements? He is stunned and heartbroken. The Galatians are returning to the very system Christ freed them from. They are observing days, months, seasons, and years, not because they want to honor God, but because they believe these rituals make them righteous. Paul is not condemning spiritual practices, he is condemning the belief that practices can replace grace. He is watching his spiritual children trade freedom for bondage, joy for fear, sonship for slavery, intimacy for distance, promise for performance, and it breaks him. He says, I am afraid for you, not afraid of them, but afraid for them, afraid of what legalism will do to their hearts, their joy, their identity. Paul then reminds them of how they first received him. He came to them in weakness, possibly with a physical ailment. He was not impressive, not polished, not strong. Yet they did not despise him. They welcomed him, honored him, loved him. Paul says, you would have plucked out your own eyes and given them to me. He asks, where is that blessedness you spoke of? In other words, where did your joy go? Where did your love go? Where did your freedom go? Where did your tenderness go? Paul knows that legalism does not merely distort doctrine, it drains joy, breeds comparison, and suffocates love. Paul then exposes the motives of the false teachers. They zealously affect you, but not well. In modern language, they flatter you, but their intentions are toxic. Legalism always has a hidden agenda. It creates dependence on leaders instead of dependence on Christ. It creates insecurity instead of identity. It creates fear instead of freedom. It creates comparison instead of community. Paul is saying, they want you to need them. I want you to know Christ. Then Paul says one of the most intimate things he ever writes, my little children, for whom I labor in birth again until Christ be formed in you. This is not theological language, this is parental language. This is emotional language. This is spiritual labor. Paul is saying, I brought you into the faith once, and now I am laboring again because you are drifting. He is not angry, he is grieving. He is not scolding, he is pleading. He is not demanding, he is aching. His deepest desire is not that they follow him, but that Christ be formed in them. Paul then turns to the story of Abraham's two sons, Ishmael and Isaac. Ishmael was born according to the flesh, through human effort, human planning, human strategy. Isaac was born according to promise, through God's power, God's timing, God's faithfulness. Paul uses this story as an allegory, not to rewrite history, but to reveal spiritual truth. Those who cling to the law are living like children of the slave woman, striving, performing, depending on their own strength. Those who embrace the gospel are children of the free woman, living by promise, resting in grace, depending on God's Spirit. Paul's message is clear, you cannot mix law and grace. You cannot mix flesh and promise. You cannot mix performance and faith. You cannot mix slavery and sonship. You must choose one or the other. Paul ends the chapter with a powerful command, cast out the bondwoman and her son. Paul is not talking about people, he is talking about systems, mindsets, beliefs, bondages. He is saying, cast out the mindset of slavery. Cast out the belief that righteousness comes through effort. Cast out the fear that you are not enough. Cast out the pressure to perform. Cast out the chains Christ already broke. Because, Paul says, we are not children of the bondwoman, but of the free. Galatians 4 calls us to live as sons and daughters, not servants. It calls us to embrace intimacy with God, not fear of Him. It calls us to rest in promise, not strive under pressure. It calls us to walk in freedom, not return to bondage. It calls us to let the Spirit cry Abba in our hearts. It calls us to cast out every voice that tells us we must earn what Christ already gave. The gospel does not make you a better slave. The gospel makes you a beloved child. And when you live from that identity, everything changes.